cannot get this thing off. Just can't. Well, I got it off. Whatever. Hey everyone, I'm Saffitz. Welcome to my sort of kitchen at my cabin in the Hudson Valley. I've been really enjoying my time up here because the seasons are changing, fall to winter, and I really relish cozy activities. One of which is drinking hot chocolate and putting a homemade marshmallow on top. So today I'm showing you a recipe for homemade marshmallows, not as hard as you think it is, and it is a real pleasure of winter to sort of settle in with a cup of hot chocolate and a homemade marshmallow. I'm gonna show you how to do it. It's really fun. So marshmallows, there's a couple techniques for making them at home. I'm showing you a kind of classic technique that's an egg white based marshmallow. There are recipes for ones that are based on corn syrup, and the egg white based marshmallows are really like a French thing. That was when I got really into marshmallows when I was in culinary school, and like a lot of the patisseries in Paris make marshmallows. I just love them so much. Like the texture is so satisfying and they come in different flavors. You can make a chocolate one, you can make lemon ones. I just love vanilla. I just love that pillowy, soft, kind of bouncy texture. They're just so fun.
What would happen if you put your marshmallow into a microwave?
So you can put a homemade marshmallow in the microwave and it will grow like you used to do with the jet puffed ones on a paper plate in your own microwave at home, which is what I would do with my sisters. You can toast it, you can put it on top of like a pie and brulee it. You know, it behaves just like marshmallow. So I have my stand mixer with the whisk attachment. You really kind of need the power of a stand mixer to whip the egg whites and everything. Then part of the sort of technical aspect of this recipe is you need to cook a sugar syrup to a specific temperature. So I have an instant read thermometer. You could also just use a candy thermometer. I have a pastry brush for wiping down the sides of the pot, a small saucepan. I have an 8x8 pan because I'm going to set the marshmallows in a pan and then cut them into squares. And then a little sieve for dusting powdered sugar over everything because this is very sticky. So the powdered sugar helps to prevent sticking. Ingredients are very simple. I have 3 large egg whites at room temp, 2/3 of a cup granulated sugar, a tablespoon of powdered unflavored gelatin, a little bit of salt, vanilla. This is a 1/4 cup of corn syrup, so it's primarily an egg white based sort of meringue, but you do add a little corn syrup plus some cold water for making the syrup and softening the gelatin. This is some powdered sugar mixed with just a little bit of cornstarch, and this is that mixture that we're going to dust all over the marshmallow to prevent sticking.
What about those over there?
Oh, this would be my water or my coffee. These are ingredients, but a different kind. Anytime you're working with powdered gelatin, you need to soften it. So often you'll find recipes for marshmallows that call for gelatin sheets. That's more of something that the pros use, but all my recipes call for powdered unflavored gelatin because it's just very easy to find in any grocery store. So I have 1/3 of a cup of cold water right here. And I'm pouring it into a shallow container or bowl. Then I'm going to sprinkle the gelatin just evenly over top, just right on the surface of the water. And don't stir it. What happens is the little granules of gelatin absorb the liquid and swell. And so eventually this whole thing will kind of become solid. And then that's when you can melt the gelatin. You just can't really go straight to melting powdered gelatin. You have to always soften it first. And make sure you use cold water.
What would happen if you just dropped it all in?
Oh, if you dropped it all in, it just wouldn't evenly hydrate. And then it just kind of messes up the setting power of whatever you're making later on. So you kind of like gets this weird wrinkly pattern. Don't stir it, just let it sit there, and it takes about 10 minutes for it to soften. So while the gelatin is softening, I'm going to get the rest of my ingredients in their proper place. So into the stand mixer, I'm going to add my 3 egg whites. Now we're whipping these into meringue, so make sure when you're separating the eggs that there's no bit of yolk or anything in the egg whites. And then to my saucepan, I'm going to add the granulated sugar and a 1/4 cup of corn syrup, I really feel like there's a time and a place for corn syrup, and although I only really use it where it's needed because it has certain chemical properties. You know, I don't put it in baked goods where it doesn't belong, but I don't think there's anything wrong with using a 1/4 cup of it in a marshmallow recipe at all. And then I have another 1/4 cup of water that I'm gonna add, and that is gonna help bring this together into a syrup. We are going to cook this sugar mixture, bring it to a boil, it'll all dissolve and turn into a syrup. We're gonna cook it to 245 Fahrenheit. So I have my thermometer over by the stove. While that's cooking, so this is a little bit of a dance. Maybe you caught our buttercream episode where we had a similar technique of streaming a hot syrup into eggs. So I'm gonna sort of be watching my syrup come to temp, and then I'm gonna be whipping my egg whites because you have to have the egg whites really frothy and foamy before you stream in the syrup. And then after all the syrup is into my egg whites, I'm going to melt the gelatin in the same saucepan and add the gelatin. So if you want to think about marshmallows as really just like a very sort of dense meringue set with gelatin, you would be right. So that's what we're doing. So I have my burner, I'm going to turn it on kind of medium-high and stir with a heat-proof spatula to encourage the sugar to dissolve as this comes to a boil. So as this climbs up in temp, I'm going to start kind of hopping over to my stand mixer and getting the egg whites whipping a little bit.
So that's chemistry, right?
Sure. This just came to a boil, and it's now this sort of clear, bubbly liquid. I am at 223. So now is a good time for me to pop over to my mixer and start whipping the egg whites. So I'm gonna let this just kind of bubble away. I have it on medium, so it's not on high, because I don't want it to go too fast. Okay, so you're gonna whip slowly at first. I'm gonna add a pinch of salt. That helps to kind of break them up. Then I'm gonna let these whip while my sugar is cooking. And I have it on medium, I would say. And I want these to get really frothy and foamy and opaque while my sugar comes up to temp. And then I'm gonna bring it over here, stream it in, and that is really like the kind of dicey part of the recipe, but it's just not, you don't have to move at the speed of light. You can pour slowly. It's just, you know, you're doing two things at once, but it'll all be okay. So I'm at 230.
What was the target again?
245. So I have a little bit of a ways to go.
Is that starting to look fluffy?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna stop my mixer. I'm gonna turn it back on before I add the egg whites, but I think at this stage, knowing where the syrup is, I can just turn it off for now. In order to just equalize the temperature, all you have to do is swirl the pot. So I'm just giving it a gentle swirl. And often with a thermometer, I tilt the pan to get most of the contents to one side so I have a little bit of depth, because you don't wanna touch the bottom of the pot with the thermometer. Then you're gonna get a not accurate reading. When I have 5 degrees to go, I'll probably turn the mixer back on. I've made marshmallows before where I was less sure about the point at which to stream the sugar into the egg whites, and I remember making these when I was in grad school, and I just sat there for like a half an hour whipping the mixture, and it just never gained any volume, and it was super liquid. And that's because you really need to have a certain amount of air already in the egg whites before you stream in the sugar. Just keep that in mind. If you stream them into like liquid egg whites, you'll never get marshmallow texture. So now it's climbing a little bit faster. I'm at 239, probably around 240. I'm gonna turn the mixer back on. And when I bring the mixture over to stream it into the egg whites, I wanna turn the mixer up to high, but for now I'll just kind of keep it on medium. 244.
246.
Oh, well, okay. Maybe I hit 246, but that's okay. I'm gonna turn that off. I'm gonna come over to my mixer. I'm gonna turn the speed up to high. And this part's very important. What you wanna do is you wanna aim to stream the syrup into the bowl right at the point where the whites meet the side of the bowl, but not hitting the whisk. So sometimes you can just stream it directly down the sides of the bowl. What you wanna not do is hit the whisk, because then you'll have sugar sprayed all around the sides of your KitchenAid. So I'm just streaming it very slowly. And you can see that the volume of the egg whites is increasing dramatically. This mixture is called an Italian meringue. It's basically egg whites into which a hot sugar syrup are streamed. It makes a very dense, very light, very kind of luxurious meringue. And now what I'm gonna do is add my gelatin. So I have this saucepan that's already hot, and all of the gelatin is hydrated and kind of swelled. I'm gonna scrape this into my saucepan. And the heat in the saucepan should just already melt Like, I don't need to put this over the heat again. And you also don't want to boil gelatin because that will destroy some of the setting powder. So you want to go until it's completely melted so there's no jelly kind of areas and that you don't see any granules at all. So as these continue to whip, I'm going to add now my gelatin and stream it in just the same way. This is less of a sort of delicate operation than the sugar, but just stream it in slowly so that the egg whites have a chance to incorporate the liquid. And this is what's going to give the marshmallows that like bouncy set texture and turn it from meringue into marshmallow. I'm going to add my flavoring. It's going to be just a very plain vanilla marshmallow. You could add coffee extract. You could add cocoa powder to this to make it chocolate. You could add like orange blossom water to make orange blossom marshmallows. Peppermint, make peppermint marshmallows. You can sort of do so many different flavor combinations, but I'm just going to go vanilla. Maybe I'll do a little bit more. I'm going to beat that in. And while that's continuing to mix, so I'm going to whip this until the sides of the bowl feel cool to the touch. And it's warm. It's not hot, but it's not quite cool yet. So I'm going to let this continue to whip, and I'm going to prepare my pan. You could do this in any size pan, so the dimensions are up to you. You could also just make freeform marshmallows. So you could just kind of dollop it, or you could use a pastry bag to pipe like little sort of Hershey Kiss shapes. It's totally up to you. I'm going to set this in a pan so that I can cut it into squares and have a nice like plump kind of cube-shaped marshmallow for my mug of hot chocolate. So I'm going to dust this pan with a generous amount of powdered sugar with a little bit of cornstarch mixed in. And this will theoretically prevent sticking. It just becomes like a super sticky mixture as it cools. Now I'm going to try to coat the sides if I can. Actually, probably it's not a bad idea to just kind of scrape everything down a little bit. You can see that it looks like meringue, but it has sort of a different texture. It is much more sort of firm and has a little bit of that bounce. And it's still a little warm, so I'm going to just put it back in so it can finish whipping. And I'll just also say that when we stream that hot syrup into the egg whites, that essentially cooks the egg whites. So there is no risk of like raw eggs here because we're not baking it or anything. It's just going to set at room temp. We're almost there. Look at this beautiful mixture. Doesn't it look so, it's just like this amazing cloud pillow. It looks so good. So I'm going to set this into the pan. So I'm going to scrape it in. I'm just going to let it fall in and settle onto the sugared bottom of the pan. You know, if you get really skilled at making marshmallows, I think it's a much better preparation to use for like a lemon meringue pie or a s'more pie or something like that because it doesn't weep, meaning it doesn't sort of release liquid as it sits. It's super stable. It's stable at room temp. You can like make your own Malamars, which is so good. I feel like making homemade marshmallows is kind of like a pastry chef kind of thing, and it's just really cool and you realize you can make it at home. So I'm going to just kind of smooth this into the pan. I'm going to be ordering like a fleet of small offset specials for this house because one is not enough. That looks so pretty, but I'm actually just going to I'm going to smooth it out more.
Do you like a textured marshmallow?
I do really like doing marshmallows freeform where you just like get this beautiful dollop and then you let it set and then you can put it on anything you want. But for cutting out squares, I'm going to just try to get it in an even layer because then I kind of want the shape of a cube with 6 defined sides. You'll see that even after just a few minutes of sitting here, it'll start to set, and when you try to smooth it out, you'll have like a little bit of a rough texture to it because it's like spooning into mousse or something where you're exposing all the air bubbles because it's set. So I'm gonna just leave this here at room temp.
You still have lines. There's still lines.
I'm not getting it perfectly smooth. What am I, a machine?
No, you're clear Saffitz.
I'm going to dust the surface, though, with a little bit of the powdered sugar, and I'll dust it a lot more when I go to unmold it and cut it into squares. You can basically be really generous with the powdered sugar. Yes, you're adding sweetness, but you can also dust it off of the surface before you serve them. So I'm going to let this sit at room temp, then we cut it, we go outside, and we're going to make a cozy little mug of hot chocolate. And we're gonna have that great cozy feeling of like cold air, warm jacket, warm mug, homemade marshmallow. You know, that classic feeling. So for my hot chocolate, you can't see me through the smoke. I'm right here. Indeterminate number of hours later, the marshmallows have set, and I'm gonna make some hot chocolate. Notice how I'm not saying hot cocoa, because I'm not putting cocoa in here. I'm using actual chocolate. So the chocolate is adding richness because there's cocoa butter. So I actually don't like a lot of dairy fat in my hot chocolate. I do a mixture of milk and water so that the chocolate can really come through. I don't want something too thick and like overwhelmingly rich. So I have some whole milk here. Put it into my pan. Oops. some of that splashed into the fire. A little bit of water. So then a little salt. Obviously salt and chocolate love each other. Now I have 4 ounces of bittersweet chocolate, and I have a little agave here. You could use sugar, you could use any kind of sweetener you like. I'm gonna dump in my chocolate. Now you don't want to scorch your chocolate, so keep it moving. You can take it off and on the heat. Now the marshmallow is really sweet, so I'm not gonna add, if I'm gonna add any sweetener at all, it's not gonna be very much. And I actually like to whisk a lot so that it gets a little frothy on top. So chocolate's just about melted. I'm gonna taste it. Oh.
You missed.
I missed. Oops. Okay, it's not hot enough yet. I'm gonna move it back on the heat. And as much as I say I don't want it to be too sweet, I think it could use a little agave. So this is a light agave, so it's like a pretty neutral flavor. We'll call that 1 to 2 teaspoons. All right, so while this is warming, I'm gonna cut my marshmallows. Okay, truthfully, this is much easier to do inside, but I'm gonna attempt to do it here in a reclining position on this Adirondack chair. So I'm gonna give an extra coating of my powdered sugar mixture that has that little bit of cornstarch in it. Well, I should say powdered sugar already has cornstarch in it, but I added even more. And then I'm gonna do a center cut marshmallow. So I have my scissors, and I'm just gonna cut into the marshmallows with my scissors. But I'm gonna wait until I have my hot chocolate ready. Let's try to not spill it this time, huh? There we go. Yum. I'm gonna do a little more milk. It's pretty chocolatey. But delicious. I really like using half milk, half water because sometimes I think the dairy fat can get in the way of the chocolate flavor. So use a chocolate that you would just eat out of hand. All right, my hot chocolate is hot. Pour it into my mug. Want my center cut marshmallow. Oh my God, these marshmallows are so tall. Look at it. And gently plop it in my cocoa. Now obviously this is like a big marshmallow. I like to give the hot chocolate a chance to kind of melt some of the marshmallow, and then like after a little bit of sipping, then I like to go for it. Mm. Mm. I guess I do that a lot.
I think that should be the merchandise.
It's really good. Not too sweet. I think just that little bit of agave helped to like round it out. But it's has enough bitterness that like I want to taste some of the marshmallow. And the consistency is nice. Not too thick. I don't want to have to eat the hot chocolate with a spoon. I just want to be able to sip it and have it be not too rich, but like ultra satisfying, very warming, very delicious. I'm gonna taste some of the marshmallow now. See, so the underside of that marshmallow is like melted a little bit, and then it kind of blends into the hot chocolate. This is very good. It really is like a true treat for colder weather. And I really hope you try making marshmallows at home because it's fun. There's so many applications for it. Like, yes, this is such a classic one, but possibilities are endless. Thank you for watching. It's so fun having you with me at the cabin for these kinds of fun outdoor projects as well. So thank you for watching, and like and subscribe.
All right, let's hold for room tone for 10 seconds real quick. Cut!